Well, maybe what we should do is branch out into academic article of the week, because I can tell you that the Journal of Lesbian Studies has some amazing stuff in it.
That's what we're going to do. I can't wait.
I'm Kathleen Stock.
And I'm Julie Bindle.
And this is the Lesbian Project podcast, all the sapphic traffic for anyone who wants a bit more lesbian in their life.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hello, Julie. We're both in different locations today.
I mean, well, let's start with you. Where are you?
I'm in Vancouver.
Oh, how exciting. You're lesering in Vancouver.
Exciting. I'm lesering in Vancouver.
Oh, so you're with the Lesbian Collective?
Well, I'm a guest of the Vancouver Lesbian Collective, yeah. And I arrived last night at 1 a.m. here because my plane was delayed by 4 hours on the tarmac in Heathrow.
No.
Because a passenger was taken ill and then had to be removed, and then their bags had to be taken out. And then we got to the runway and started taxiing, and they discovered that we didn't have enough fuel. So we then had to go back to the stand. So I'm amazed that I'm here, but I am. And
well,
it's, what is time? It's 3:15 with you, and it's 8:19 with me.
Oh dear! And we're doing this for the love of our subscribers. Let's face it.
We are, because weren't actually going to do. We were going to have a week off, and then I was like, we can't let them down. So that's how much we love you. So well, where are you?
I'm in the Unheard offices. So Unheard is a publication that's based in London, and we both write for Unheard, and it's great. And I'm in their yellow room, as you can see.
That's very nice, very exotic too.
And I'm just about to go over the road and meet Sal Grover of the Tickle versus Giggle case. More anon about that further down the line.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to be a expert witness in that. So I better not say anything about it at all.
Is there any case going that you're not an expert witness in at the moment?
I'm sure there is. But I was an expert witness in the Amy Ham Tribunal, which concluded this week with final arguments. And I'm going to meet Amy this week because I'm giving a talk, which will be done by the time we go put this out. I'm giving a talk as the guest of the Vancouver Lesbian Collective about gender identity and its harms to women. And Amy's going to come along, I think, so that'll be nice.
Wonderful, because those women have been fighting this fight for so long in Vancouver, and they're thrilled to have you there. When I was over there a few months ago, they were literally chomping at the bit to get you to agree to visit. And, I'm jealous. I wish I was there. I wish I was coming to your talk. Yeah. I've heard it all before. What more is there to say?
So this is quite a short one. We will do a bumper episode next week, we promise, and then I can tell you all about how the talk went, whether there was any Trinosity protesters or what. Hopefully not, fingers crossed. The first thing we have to talk about is that in Italy, the decision to take non-birth mothers, lesbians who are not the birth mother, off children's birth certificates has been revoked, although it still could go to appeal. So this is a complicated thing to explain, and particularly when you are as jet lagged as I am. But last July there was a big kerfuffle in the progressive press that reached The Guardian in the UK about the fact that it was being reported that Maloney's government, which is a far-right government, definitely it's controversial how you class it, but it has historical links to far-right organisations, had taken non-birth mothers, as in the partner who is not the birth mother of a child, in a lesbian partnership, off the birth certificate. I wrote about it and heard for the time, and then I got an open letter, which I will actually link in the show notes, from some Italian radfems saying that that this had been widely misreported. It wasn't, they said, an initiative of Maloney. They said it was actually the judiciary that decided this. and it's quite a complicated story about an adoption, a decision that was made about adoption generally that was not being observed by local mayors and town halls, and so they decided to kind of reverse the decisions of some local town halls on who goes on the birth certificate. Anyway, I will link all the information that we have about that so you can make up your own mind. I guess what we want to discuss, I suppose, is like whether lesbians who aren't the birth mother should be on the birth certificate.
So this decision has now been revoked, hasn't it? And many...
It's been revoked, yeah, but it could go to appeal again.
Yes, and I think it's hellishly complicated. And this is, I think, in a way, the spirit of this podcast, to think about ways in which things get typecast as being on the right, therefore bad, being on the left, therefore good. And we know that with
we know the left are always good.
Yeah, and we know with lesbian rights and with the gender wars, the left is abysmal, and that's not just in the UK. Now, Italy's a difficult country to navigate your way around because it's so, I mean, it's long been very right wing, and it's also very regionalized. I mean, it really is just so fragmented.
And it's very Catholic.
Exactly.
Very Catholic. Or at least, I mean, even if Catholicism on the wane, the links with the Vatican and the structures are very much Catholic oriented.
Well, yeah, and sometimes things happen. It's a bit like a stock clock is right twice a day. Sometimes things actually happen which are seen as progressive, such as overturning this ruling that the non-birth mother shouldn't be on the birth certificate, which actually has, in some ways, a good outcome so long as the non-birth lesbian mother is protected with her rights to parent that child. Because actually, gay men are increasingly using the human rights legislation and arguments, and this is in Italy as well, where where commercial surrogacy is illegal, as it is in most countries, to argue that they should have their names on a child's birth certificate. So it's not always sensible, I think, to put non-biological parents on a birth certificate, so long as we have, in my view, a protection in terms of parental rights or the right to adopt for a non-birth parent.
Yeah. I mean, when I wrote about it for Unheard, I was saying, I was taking the British perspective because obviously I don't understand the Italian judicial structure anyway. And clearly I didn't, because I thought it was a decision by the government at the time, and apparently it wasn't. But I was talking about in Britain and pointed out that it wasn't lesbians that got the precedent for putting a non-birth parent on a birth certificate. It was actually heterosexual couples using IVF and using sperm, or maybe not IVF, but using sperm of a donor because the husband in the couple couldn't reproduce. So that was the precedent set. So there's obviously, I mean, the thing is, I think that there are good arguments, actually quite socially conservative arguments even, for putting the other partner on the birth certificate. I mean, it keeps the family, it's more likely to keep the family together, and it gives certain rights that if the birthing parent dies, then you don't have to go through a lengthy adoption process and so on. So I think that actually you could argue that if you want to support two-parent families, and two-parent families are more stable than one-parent family socially, then it's a good move, and that's what I tried to say. But equally, I can see that the complicating factors are that I do think people should really ideally know their genetic background. And the trouble is, anonymous donation doesn't help with that. And secondly, there is this additional complexity around surrogacy and gay men, because as the Italian Radfems write in their letter, in Italy these issues are just completely confused by progressives, and so parents are just treated as exactly the same, no matter whether they're male or female, and no matter whether they have used a surrogate or not. And no matter, I mean, not in Italy, but that's the potential.
Yes.
That's basically the progressive picture, is like, you just need two parents. Maybe you don't even need two parents, but you can have two parents and they could be any shape, any sex, as it were.
Yes.
Gametes can be any sex.
Yeah.
And that leads relaxation. So you do end up with two men paying for, in some situations, paying for an egg or paying for a body.
Yeah, and I think that the anonymous sperm donor issue shouldn't muddy the water on this, because there are many women who have anonymous sperm donors. It's called a one night stand with a bloke who you're not going to see again. So it's not unknown that women get pregnant and don't necessarily know who the father is. And he's played no active role and he's out of the picture and all the rest of it. But I'm a firm, firm believer in the right of all children to know their genetic makeup, background, sperm donor, father, whoever they want to refer to him, as should they also have the legal right to know their mother, if this is a surrogacy arrangement or some adoption arrangement. And I just think, as far as I know, and I'm sure that many of our listeners, our subscribers will correct me if I'm wrong, lesbian liberationists, lesbian campaigners didn't ask for this. We didn't ask to be on the birth certificate of a child that the non-birth parent was co-parenting. We asked for legal rights. We asked for the right to adopt, which of course we didn't have until not that long ago. And we asked for, parental rights, which are really, really important.
So you don't have to have the same. There's other ways to realise parental rights than by putting a non-birth parent on the birth certificate.
It's a lie. Now, putting a non-birth parent on the birth certificate is a lie. I
should declare an interest that I've just remembered. Bearing in mind that I am very tired, and I did say this in my Unheard article, but I am on the birth certificate of my daughter.
Right, so you've lied on an official document.
So it's a lie. It's not a lie, because in Britain you are allowed to, and the reasons at the time were, again, to avoid a lengthy adoption process afterwards, and I must admit I felt a bit weird about it at the time, but I hadn't properly thought through, I think, some of this surrounding implications, and particularly not for the arguments about gay men and surrogacy. And I think if lesbians are going to keep insisting that we should be on the birth certificates, two women should be on the birth certificates, we need, and we are also against mothers being taken off them, like birth mothers being taken off them. And we need some kind of argument as to why lesbians are different from gay men in this respect. That's the thing. This equality argument just means that we all end up with exactly the same situation.
I agree.
And if we think that mothers have a role to play, a crucial, uneliminable role to play in reproduction, then we need to be making those arguments.
I agree. And I think, again, that there is a bun fight going on amongst radical feminists and others in Italy about whether this is a good or a bad thing, who wanted it, who didn't want it, who it's going to affect adversely. And actually, I think, as I say, many things that lesbians don't ask for, don't campaign for as a priority, or because we just don't necessarily think it's going to enrich our lives, we still take advantage of. We still might sign up to civil partnership, for example, which is a really clear route for lesbians to next of kin rights. So, you may not want the marriage and the whole ceremony and all the romance and the rest of it, but you do see the value in that. And so I think that, of course, your name on a birth certificate is an easy way to be recognised as that child's parent officially, because we've had such terrible, we've had such a terrible history of losing children as lesbians, either those that we've co-parented who aren't our biological children when relationships split up and there's no recourse, or lesbians through the family courts when violent men, argue that these women aren't fit mothers. So I do think it's important, but I'm not at all clear in any way, shape or form on what this Italian ruling necessarily means moving forward. But I am worried about surrogacy.
I will put the links in the show notes, as they say, and we will now move on to a new survey that's come out from America, a Gallup poll, which says that LGBTQ plus identification in the US is now at 7.6%. More than, and this is particularly marked at the Gen Z level. More than 1 in 5 Zoomers identify as LGBTQ plus, And if you scroll through the stats, it's basically what you would expect. Like the vast majority of these LGBTQ plus people are identifying as bisexual, and of the vast majority of bisexuals, it's women who are identifying as bisexual. I'm not exactly sure whether they've made women females or not, but either way, I think it's clear that it's females who are identifying as bisexual. So, for instance, 5.7% of the women that they asked said they were bisexual, whereas 2.1% of the men said that they were bisexual. And the younger you get, the more likely you are to say that you're something other than straight. So, what do you make of this?
It's quite a big leap from figures from the previous decade. So things are moving fast in terms of the identification of whatever new sexual or gender identity is included in the rainbow. And it doesn't really give us any information about how many lesbians there are, or how many women, actual women, have a lesbian identity. It says that 1% of this survey, those that did say that they were part of this alphabet soup, were lesbian or gay. So
1.2.
Okay, so what does it tell us? I mean, it tells us that there are more and more and more identities that aren't necessarily anything to do with sexual orientation. I don't think it tells us at all that there are that there are increasing numbers of lesbians, increasing numbers of gay men, because things are easier for us to come out. I don't think it says anything of that sort. And in fact, I think probably it just tells us that it's just a little bit of a trendy label to say that you're part of this big rainbow. Because if you say, I'm LGBTQ plus, well, no one's going to say which bit of that are you. You're just queer with grey with purple hair or a septum ring.
Yeah, that's true. And the other problem, well, there's many problems here, but one of them is that the large number of bisexual women, or women who are identifying as bisexual, let's just say, actually, in other studies that I've looked at, if you then ask follow-up questions like, well, what about your sexual activity? Are you sleeping with women? Quite often, a lot of them aren't. So they are like aspirational bisexual. They're actually in relationships with men, but they would like
aspirational bisexual. That's brilliant.
It's actually a gender identity that we will be doing in the next few weeks. But basically they're sleeping with men, but they're calling themselves bisexual for whatever reason. Let's just say, we can see there are reasons to do with kudos and not looking like boring. And yet then there's further follow-up surveys that will say we'll put lesbians and bisexual women together. So that's not a natural grouping. If half the bisexuals are not actually sleeping with women, that's not really a natural grouping. I also think that pollsters, what this shows is pollsters have lost sight of what the hell we're doing all this for. Like, why is it interesting? It's like doing a survey of people who like the color green.
That's true.
Like, what is it for? Because originally we wanted to know how many lesbians and gay men there were in order to meet needs. Partly anyway. I mean, let's hope that would be the nice interpretation of these surveys. These surveys tell you how much of a percentage of a population are in a particular group, and then tries to work out what we need to do to meet their needs. But what are the needs of somebody who is claims she's bisexual but sleeps with men all the time? They're not, it is about as interesting as knowing whether she likes the colour green or not.
Well, it's why we set up the Lesbian Project, isn't it? So that we could identify the population and those particular needs, and viewpoints of that population. And I mean, that's a very broad way of describing why we set up the Lesbian Project, but it's pretty much there, isn't it? It's that we need to drill down into what needs are being met or ignored or deferred when we're talking about lesbians being lumped in with a whole load of blue fringed kind of identitarians. But I have to say here that it says on these survey findings, the most commonly volunteered LGBTQ plus identities are pansexual and asexual.
Right. Okay, I missed that bit. That's weird.
Right. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about pansexual, which just means that you'll basically, up for anyone.
It's not the cruiser. It is just normal. Yeah, you're up for anyone. But I mean, it
And
doesn't mean you're up for anyone,
asexuals, you're up for
obviously.
no one.
Just means in your bedroom, you imagine that you're this exotic creature who will, whose sexuality is very prolific. But in reality, you'll probably end up sleeping with men and women, which is what most of us end up sleeping
Well,
with.
and the asexuals needs. Why do we need to know about how many people aren't doing it?
Well,
Why?
again, I mean, if it could be successfully argued, now let's not make any jokes about asexuals, mental note. But if it could be successfully argued,
Oh, please, let's. I mean, it's hard not to.
no, we do it every week. It's really not fair. We'll be the reason, that they are oppressed if we don't watch out, because there aren't any other reasons.
because of the Lesbian Project podcast.
But what are the needs of asexuals? I mean, how can an absence give rise to a need?
My point
basically,
exactly,
you're
Kathleen.
fine. You're clearly fine.
This
don't have
is
to.
my
You don't
point.
have particular medical needs. I mean, there's a campaign going on in Stonewall at the moment, that they've just sort of launched properly, saying that we need to depathologize asexuality. Like who pathologized asexuality? Where are these mythical medics who are like, we need to deprogram you out of your harmful asexuality? Nobody cares.
Do not assume that asexuals are not having sex. Okay, look.
We've done it again.
Let's roll swiftly on, because we haven't let you down, subscribers. We do have our sexual identity of the week.
The sexual identity of the week this week is one that Julie found. You didn't invent it, did you?
I didn't.
Pomogender. Pomogender is a gender identity where one denies or does not fit any labels for any particular gender. For example, one who is pomogender may know they are not cisgender, but cannot or is not interested in specifying their gender or genders. Right, so this sounds like gender apathetic.
It
sounds like gender. We did gender apathetic 2 weeks ago. This again sounds like somebody who doesn't give a shit about gender, which is basically us.
Which is us.
So,
are we pomogender then?
Is it pomo or homo?
Pomoro,
I'm thinking like
homo.
It's postmodern gender.
Yeah, because it sounded to me like some Italian restaurant in Holborn. So,
that's Pomodoro.
Why do they keep coming up with these things that mean absolutely nothing at all? It's like asexuality.
Don't. Yes.
It's the gender version of asexuality, let's be honest.
Well, that sounds right. No, because it sounds more like it's about you don't care what your gender is.
Well, but we don't have a gender.
In the old days, your gender was just like your physical, your sort of presentation. Like, so I've got a gender, you've got a gender, but we don't give a shit about it. We don't think about it. We don't create it consciously.
I don't have a gender.
You don't have a gender identity, but you do have a gender in the old sense of just like a social expression of your femaleness.
And when do I socially express my femaleness? Well, when have you seen me?
Well, you don't wear flowery dresses. You've made a conscious choice, I suppose, to like wear the clothes you have. I suppose.
So, what gender does that make me then? Gender confused.
Well, it sounds like you are pomogender because you have a gender, but you don't care about it.
From now on, I'm identifying as pomogender.
Pomo. Okay. Well, good.
Yeah.
I think we need, in future sexual identities of the week, we need to find ones that don't just collapse back into ones that we've already done. Okay. Also, I have to say, it's a bit unfair to say, who keeps coming up with these, because we know who keeps coming up with these 12-year-olds on Tumblr.
Shall we get more grown up about it for the next episode? Shall we really, really put our thinking caps on and have a look at the proper literature about this and find something from an academic journal?
Oh yeah, because that'll make it like
more mad. That'll make
sensible.
It more bonkers.
Okay, well maybe what we should do is branch out into academic article of the week, because I can tell you that the Journal of Lesbian Studies, for instance, if that's what it's still called or what was ever called, has some amazing stuff in it. Or Hypatia, which is a philosophy journal, has some amazing stuff in it. So actually,
you're on.
Let's move on, because I think we might have scrape the barrel of sexual
Well,
intimacy of the
they just
week
keep
now.
crossing over into each other.
Yeah, they're all
Okay,
great.
okay.
One great big gender.
So, big
Right.
announcement.
Okay, well, that's what we're going to do.
That's what we're going to do. I can't wait.
All right. Okay,
Will
cool.
you look for the first one, and
Yes.
I will look for the one after that? I'm going to
Yes.
really relish this. Thank you very
And
much.
also, our listeners could send us in suggestions if they'd like to. I am now going to try and stay awake for the next 12 hours and see you next week.
Well, you really should go and have a nice breakfast. I wrote an article about food in Vancouver. You should look it up. You should look it up, and
I will
go with my recommendations for
I
breakfast.
definitely will. I'll do that right this second. Okay.
You have a great trip, Kathleen, and see you next week.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.